Nicole is no more, and the tropics quiet with no activity expected over the next 5 days. However, are conditions conducive for an end-of-season storm in the tropics? We're going to break it down here in your hurricane headquarters on Track in the Tropics, powered by Handyman Roofing. Hello there to you, folks. JB here with you again in your hurricane headquarters alongside meteorologist Rebecca Barry. Rebecca, we are looking here at an empty tropics right now, which is so great to see.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So beautiful.
So it's beyond words.
Yes.
But we still have a couple of weeks to go as we wrap up hurricane season. So we'll send it over to you for the very latest on whether or not are conditions out there conducive for a storm this late in the season.
And so right now they're not. We're not seeing any hints or anything that would lead us to believe we're going to see any further development. If we do, it would be unlikely. When I was looking at the long-term forecast models right before I hopped on the stream just to see what the latest is, the GFS currently is hinting that we could see a fish storm, if you will, just a random low that forms out in the mid-Atlantic. But I think that's really unlikely because the Euro doesn't pick up on it, neither does the Canadian, neither does the Icon or the Gem. And so this is what the GFS does when it's quiet, is it tries to initiate a storm 10 days out. And so I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think we have anything to worry about. We don't have a lot of moisture in the tropics right now. We're actually seeing a cold front push across the southeast, and that's really changing up our weather locally here in Florida. We're going to participate in fall for a couple of days. And once you start to get those pushes of colder air, it changes things up dynamically across the atmosphere, especially closer to the coastline. And so I just don't think we're going to see a good chance for us to see any more tropical development, especially closer to the U.S. What we're looking at right now is tropical wind shear. And this is important because these are those strong upper level winds that keep storms from forming. And they also keep any storms that do form, they basically tear them apart. And so hurricanes depend on vertical development. And with wind shear, you can't get that. And so you can see in the areas in red, that's the highest areas of wind shear, and we're looking at the Atlantic right now, and the entire Atlantic is just blanketed with wind shear right now, very strong wind shear. And so unfortunately, fortunately, we're not going to see any chances for that tropical development because the wind shear remains very high. In fact, wind shear was largely accredited to the reason that we didn't see much development earlier in the season because we had such strong wind shear. And so especially over in that sweet spot of the Atlantic, closer to the coastline of Africa, that's where the wind shear is the strongest right now. And so that tells us that we're not going to see any development in areas like that. And there's just no real pockets of lower wind shear where with warm enough sea surface temperatures that we could see something developing or spinning up, which is all good news for us for the tropics. And one of the reasons that we believe it's not going to be conducive for us to see any development in the Atlantic, especially over the next couple of days. Now, we are on the tail end of season, the end of the season that peaks in September, of course. And there's that little bump in October where we normally get a storm or two out there. And it's especially threatening to the Gulf that time of the year because of cold fronts pushing through. And it looks like Ian was a couple weeks late for that bump. The whole season's been late. And then we had Nicole, which is even later. And November storms aren't unheard of, but they're not likely. They're not usual. That's not what we normally see. When we talked earlier in the season about the sea surface temperatures, because they were a little different this year, they were warm. That also contributed to the high levels of shear that kept us quiet, but it was also unprecedentedly warm off the coastline of Europe. And that was one of the reasons that we compared it to the 2013 season, which was also abnormally quiet with only 2 hurricanes. The sea surface temperatures were very similar that year and this year for the middle of the summer. And in the 2013 season, we had a tropical depression the first week of December. And so it's not unheard of, but once again, unlikely. And so here's how it's stacking up. We had 14 named storms so far, and the average is 14. We had 8 hurricanes, a little above average of 7, and we had 2 major hurricanes, so a little below average in terms of intensity for major hurricanes. When you take a look at how that compares to the 2020 and the 2021 season, which were, of course, outliers and being very busy, we are right about closer to average for us in terms of named storms. So this is not total number of hurricanes or total number of storms. This is just the storms that made it up to the naming level. So the average for that is 12, and we saw 14 named storms. And so that's what we're looking at when we compare it to the seasons. I'm hoping that we get to continue to talk about a quiet tropics over the next 2 weeks, and maybe do a really nice recap and take a look at how things are recovering down south when as the efforts continue to put together everything that got damaged by Ian.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to talk about in our season recap that's coming your way in a couple of weeks here, folks, on Tracking the Tropics is whether or not the preseason predictions were correct, Rebecca. We were talking, of course, early in the season about NOAA's forecast, CSU's forecast, and they were anticipating an above average season. And then, of course, over the course of the season, they'll sometimes make tweaks to those projections. But this season is going to be remembered for Ian.
Absolutely.
And there's no question. It's just a once in a decade plus type of storm. And we talk all the time on Tracking the Tropics as to what define hurricane seasons. Sometimes it's the big one. This year, it was the big one.
This year's a perfect example of why those seasonal predictions aren't a really good indication of what you might experience during the season, because even though it was a relatively quiet season or closer to average, all it takes is one storm. No one in Fort Myers thinks it was a quiet hurricane season. And it does take one storm, and the science is not there yet to tell us where that storm's going to be or how strong it's going to be. And if you have 15 storms that stay out over the Atlantic and take up names, they call it a busy season. But really a busy season is when it impacts you or your area.
That's right. And as we look ahead now, people always ask this question. We're not live on social media for this particular episode, but I will ask this question because people are always going to ask. When it comes to a December, January, even February, like a winter storm, it's possible.
Oh, it's happened. Yeah.
And it's happened, but it's just extraordinarily unlikely, correct?
It's extraordinarily unlikely. They're typically very weak because of the lack of warmth in the atmosphere. They're typically fish storms. They're just not anything we ever have to really worry about as far as a major hurricane or something headed our way. We're getting cold fronts pushing through the southeast at that time, and that is going to keep all of that kind of stuff out over the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, blizzards are more of the focus in the wintertime for our northern friends than they are as far as hurricanes being something that we have to worry about in the south. Tropical development, of course, something that we'll continue to monitor here, but it's just not extraordinarily likely that we're going to see something like a named storm. And the next up on the alphabet, I'm looking here on the screen in the Stream Center, is Owen, and it's very likely based on the way that things are stacking up right now that we do not get to the O letter in the alphabet. Before we wrap up this edition of Tracking the Tropics, we have to pass along something very, very special to our something very, very near and dear to our hearts, because this is something that we have been. I don't know how to exactly put this into words, but it's a bittersweet day here at Tracking the Tropics, because we are saying farewell to our longtime digital content producer, really a Tracking the Tropics co-founder, Heather Monahan. You see here there, sandwiched between Rebecca and, of course, meteorologist Amanda Holly. Of course, Heather has been with us here from the very beginning with Tracking the Tropics back in 2019, when it was myself, Heather, and Amanda that launched this program. We just had this crazy idea to talk to people about hurricanes and do so interactively. And it is, of course, just grown, and that is really on her shoulders. Everything that she has done, providing us with she's behind the scenes. She's the engine that makes this show go.
Yes, absolutely, especially when it comes to coordination across the entire company, because this doesn't just air on the WFLA streams, it airs to any tropical market owned by a Nexstar station. And so she's really the one that makes that happen, and she's relentless in helping us get guests and helping us get great content, and she's going to be forever missed, especially on Wednesdays.
I'm going to look into the camera and say, Heather, I don't know how we're going to do this without you. I am going to be like, I'm just going to be like wading in the water with like no life preserver in sight. So
do we get like 3 phone a friends next season?
Yeah, I might have to ask for double that, more like triple that, because Heather does so much behind the scenes, but she's also our dear friend.
Yes, yes.
Heather's always making us smile, always talking about her beloved Buffalo Bills. She's returning to upstate New York, and she's just always got this ability to make everybody around her feel better, and we're gonna miss her dearly. What has been like? You've gotten a chance to work with Heather the last year plus.
Yeah, Heather's one of my favorite people. I have an excitement for things in the digital world in terms of turning content and seeing how things go and seeing how popular things get on the internet that you write or that you produce. And she's been my partner in crime, letting me know, like, hey, that article really worked, or, ooh, here's a way we could tweak that. And so whenever you meet someone, especially work with someone that's constantly striving to make things better without being asked, without being told to do something, coming up with ideas on her own and making them happen and implementing them and doing great work, it really leaves a big void. And that's going to be felt immensely, unfortunately.
Yeah, Heather is going to be missed so dearly. And One of the people that's really going to miss her, Amanda Holly, because
Yep.
of course Amanda's there on the right side of this picture and very, very close with Heather. And she sent in a message that she wanted me to read. I'm going to read this on behalf of Amanda. She says, "I'll keep it brief because I know we are all echoing the same feelings, but Heather has always been the backbone of the TTT streams from day one. Even before that, she was an integral part of the design phase in helping build this platform from scratch. You may not see her face on stream, but she is the one behind the scenes gathering your questions and keeps it all running smoothly, pre-show to post-show. Most importantly, she's been the greatest friend and glue to our team. For 3 years, we have grown as a show and as a team, and undoubtedly, a lot of that was from her leadership and, again, all-around amazing friend and coworker. We are going to miss you a lot, but wish you all the best." Aw, it hits you right in the feels, right?
I know.
Aw, man. So Heather, you're a gem. You are just to say what Rebecca and Amanda have been saying, and I say this on behalf of our entire newsroom, our entire team. You are really the big reason why we have been so successful, and we can't thank you enough. So, and I know that there are countless people out there that watch this program on a weekly basis that really do appreciate everything that you have done to make Tracking the Tropics what it is. So thank you so very much. We've got a couple more episodes, of course, coming your way on Tracking the Tropics before the end of hurricane season. This year, Rebecca, the end of hurricane season falls on a Wednesday when we normally stream. So we will have our end of season episode. We hope to have a bunch of different meteorologists join that conversation as we try to bring you just kind of a season recap. It's really going to be Ian focused. We'll talk about Nicole as well, but that will be kind of our look back as we do every year on Tracking the Tropics. As to the hurricane season that was.
I do think they're going to end up retiring Ian and Nicole, and so they take suggestions. So if you have good I-name suggestions or in-name suggestions.
Not Isaias. That one threw me for a loop.
Well, they are making an effort to have more inclusive names. A lot of hurricanes hit Spanish-speaking countries, so I do think we're going to start to see more Spanish-themed names.
It's great. It's awesome. And when will we find out if they retire Ian and Nicole?
They meet over the summer.
Okay.
And they retire storms that have been particularly deadly or damaging. And if you notice, they alternate male-female, so it will have to be a male I name that they replace Ian with and a female N name that they replace Nicole with.
All right. We'll, of course, keep you posted here in your hurricane headquarters. Tracking the Tropics. It's powered by Handyman Roofing. Meteorologist Rebecca Barry carrying the stream here for us on this particular Wednesday episode. Tracking the Tropics streams every Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, on whatever app, website, or social media platform that you're watching on. It, of course, happens during hurricane season. So we've got 2 more to go. For all of you joining us, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Tracking the Tropics.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.